Hello to everyone. The topic is yes, of course. I don't have a presentation. I put this topic on the grid because no one else did, and so we are now actually trying to do something good. So not judge me, please. Because the topic is magnetic field on Mars, because many people are talking about a future project of colonizing Mars, and maybe also trying to transform the planet into something similar to our planet, and that will involve, for sure, the construction of a Martian atmosphere similar to the Earth atmosphere. And that is a problem, not also because it would require a large amount of gases and also a long period to build an atmosphere on Mars, but also because Mars does not have a magnetic field, a global magnetic field as the Earth has. So that's a problem for primarily two reasons. The first one is that the solar wind and the charged particles that comes from the sun, from the cosmic rays, are dangerous for the living beings. And so if we mean by colonizing Mars, if we mean by that we want to allow people to stay on Mars without a spacesuit, that means that charged particles coming from the top of the atmosphere are a serious danger for them. And so here on Earth we have the magnetic field of our planet that protects us from this particle. No magnetic field on Mars. And there is also the second issue about the future Martian atmosphere if we want to colonize it and to transform it in a planet similar to Earth. And this issue is that the absence of a strong magnetic field causes the atmosphere to vanish into space. Of course, I'm talking about long time scales because this happens on many thousands of years. So it's not something maybe we have to concern about, but in the perspective of a long-term colonization on Mars, this is an important issue. The problem is planetary atmospheres naturally lose parts of them principally by two phenomena that are the loss due to the tail of the Maxwell-Boltzmann distribution of the velocities of the particles that are in the atmosphere. So on the top of the atmosphere, some particles, by their thermal motion, may have a velocity that is greater than the escape velocity of the planet. And so very slowly on time, the atmosphere loses parts due to this phenomenon. And the other one is the drag that these escaping heated particles do on other particles that otherwise wouldn't have escaped. And this causes the atmosphere to slowly vanish in space. Of course, the solar wind is a great responsible for the loss of the atmosphere. So in case of Earth, the magnetic field prevents the solar wind particles that are charged particles to reach the top layers of our atmosphere and to drag them out. But on Mars, there's no magnetic field, so this happens. And this may be the primary cause of the absence of a thick atmosphere on the red planet. So the problem is how we build a global magnetic field on Mars, because of course we cannot imagine to kickstart the the metallic nucleus of the planet, and so we would say switch on the natural magnetic field of Mars. Although we have any project to do that, I'm not sure. Maybe you have. So we have to find other solutions. So I would like to invite, ideally, all of you here to explain if you have any ideas to do that. And I will start with my little and maybe not so smart idea. That is, why we don't build something like electric wires around the planet? I explain. Magnetic fields are generated by the motion of a current, that is charges that move in a closed path, in circles. On Earth, the responsible for this motion is are the motions of convective motions inside the nucleus. So there are huge amounts of metals, like iron, that go up, down, and around the nucleus, and they produce the magnetic field. But we can, we will say, copy that mechanism on Mars by building on planes that are parallel to the equator of Mars, huge wires of dielectric matter, and charge portions of these wires so that the natural rotation of the planet causes the charges to move around on a closed circular path, and then that's a current. And a current like that generates a magnetic field. So that will be a way to have something like, you have to project the intensity of the current, so the quantity of charges that must go all around due to the rotation of the planet. But that's feasible almost in theory. So if you put many of these wires at different latitudes on the planet, and that you can make something like that using the materials that are already on Mars. You don't have to bring to Mars from the Earth materials to build something like that. In this way, you can build an actual magnetic field. And you can also have control on this magnetic field, because if you, for example, lower the amount of charge in these wires, you can lower, for example, the magnetic field, or the opposite if you have to get, if you need a stronger magnetic field. So, in my opinion, this will be a feasible way to put a global magnetic field on Mars. Of course, I'm not talking about economic feasibility, because I'm an astrophysicist, so I'm not an expert in economics, but I can imagine it will cost a lot, but we are all talking about something a little bit. Something far distant in the future, so they will know how to pay for this stuff. And so now I would like to give you the microphone and to tell us your ideas. To be questions.
How do we power this?
Okay.
We need a lot of power on global magnetic.
Yes. When I was under the shower thinking about this stuff, because yes. Not only, also sitting on. Well, never mind.
How romantic.
That's science. I imagine something like a huge Van de Graaff generator, because you don't have to build an actual current, so you don't have to. You don't need an. You don't need a battery. You just need to build electrostatic charges. So it may take a long time to build this system because you probably need a lot of charge. But I think that just by the standard means of production of electrostatic charge, it is feasible. I mean, although you have, you know, some reason why this shouldn't be true. But in case, tell me, please.
If we are daydreaming, let's say nuclear fusion.
Nuclear fusion.
How are we going to go to Mars without nuclear fusion?
Slowly.
Slow. Because there are proposals like ion thrusting to be upgraded, plasma thrusting, but this will require huge amounts of power. I mean, you can get to Mars in 30 days, but you need 2 gigawatts of power on the spacecraft itself. So when we are there, we have to build this nuclear field, magnetic field. I think nuclear power may be, fusion nuclear power may be the best solution for this. Unless, I heard another crazy idea, which was putting a belt of metallic asteroids around Mars and uses their motion to produce magnetic field. Now this seems to me quite crazy.
Yes, because you have to be very careful in putting asteroids on an orbit on Mars and not directly on the surface of Mars, which is, I mean, a risk for people actually staying on Mars, because asteroids are big and fast. So,
One thing regarding power, I personally think photovoltaic solar panels are the future, and I invite you to come to our presentation at 5 p.m. because it's going to be about that. Yes, but there are still ways to get a lot of power using solar.
Just using huge solar panels.
A lot of solar panels. And
Silicon is not a problem in this universe.
yes. And another thing I wanted to talk, because you said any ideas regarding like terraforming the planet. I think one way that contributed to Earth being Earth as we know it is that because at some point in its development there were a lot of asteroids bringing water, and water brought life, and life, you know, brought the atmospheres in some kind of way because of all the algae and all, you know, the elements that produced oxygen and the atmosphere. So one idea, which is also as much crazy as the one we heard, is to make sure that we redirect the asteroids that contain as much water, like more comets, let's say, and crash them into Mars. Obviously, it's not something you do in 2 weeks or one year, but it's really a long term.
yes, and also is something you do before getting astronauts to Mars.
Of course.
Sorry. Yeah, no. The problem of the water on Mars is a big problem because because the pressure and temperature conditions do not allow to have liquid water, free surface of liquid water on Mars. So this is the main problem to fix with a thicker atmosphere. So of course that could be a solution. There's the possibility of hidden large amounts of ice beneath the surface of Mars. And I heard 2 weeks ago someone suggested to free to set free this water by well, nuclear explosions under the surface of Mars, but that's mean. I don't like it very much. What?
Elon Musk wants to nuke the planet.
So, any other idea? You want the microphone? Sure, you can, but the aim of this idea is to exploit the rotation of the planet to build the magnetic field. So you don't have to actually sustain a current all around the planet. Yes, of course, you can do you can build a magnetic field in a localized area by using other means, but just because we are daydreaming, if you colonize Mars, then why not colonize the entire Mars? So that would be great to have a magnetic field on covering all the planet. Yes. Without using a magnetic field? Yes, that would be possible using non-stationary magnetic fields. That's electromagnetic waves. You can use configuration of electromagnetic radiation to, well, not to actually trap this particle inside a localized volume around Mars, but to make them less dangerous for living beings, because you change their trajectory and you have them pass through a larger amount of atmosphere, so they are likely to be absorbed. That's surely possible. I'm not expert. I am not an expert in technology, so I don't know how to do that. There are in this room many people that are way more expert on this than me, but I think that's possible. Louder. I think is there a related question about? No. Okay. Well, of course, again, this is possible, but how do you power up these satellites to produce the magnetic field, to generate the magnetic field? Because you need a large amount of power, I think, or not? You're talking about RTGs? No? Okay, I understand. I don't know, maybe it's possible, but in my mind, the biggest problem using satellites is that you need to build a very vast magnetic field covering great surfaces. So a satellite is a point-like source of magnetic field. So I'm not sure it will be easier than using the system I described at the beginning, but I may be wrong, so that's good for. Yes, maybe it depends on the number of, the dimension of the constellation of satellites you put in orbit. no, that's a good idea actually. So we have time for just one last question. One.